The cheap dinner at a roadside diner on Bay Bridge stretched longer than Ethan Cole had planned. Rain streaked the windows while cars rushed past like they had no time for those who moved slowly. His 8-year-old daughter Lily picked at her apple pie, the fork tiny in her small hands. A black SUV pulled up sharply outside. A woman stepped in, her coat soaked through, hair hastily pulled back, eyes sharp but tired. She asked to borrow a phone because hers had died. Lily looked up and whispered, "She looks like a princess." Ethan smiled politely, unaware that this princess was Vivian Hart, Billionaire, CEO of the largest financial technology corporation on the West Coast. Just one urgent phone call, a dropped wallet, a PR crisis exploding on the TV right at that moment. And this chance encounter would become the chain of fate that pulled all three of them out of their old lives. Ethan's world revolved around schedules that never quite aligned. His beat-up van carried him from one handyman job to another, fixing leaky faucets and broken appliances in rental properties across San Francisco. Between wrench turns and pipe fittings, he watched the clock, calculating pickup times from Lily's elementary school. The math rarely worked in his favor. At Roosevelt Elementary, Lily sat alone during lunch more often than Ethan liked to admit. The other kids had moved past the gentle cruelty of childhood questions about missing mothers, but the absence still lingered. Ethan made it a point to know her teachers, volunteering for field trips when his schedule allowed, bringing homemade cookies to parent conferences. Mrs. Chen, Lily's third-grade teacher, always smiled warmly, but Ethan caught the concerned glances when Lily's homework came back with grease stains from his work gloves. The newspapers painted Vivian Hart in harsh strokes that week. Corporate restructuring had meant layoffs, 2,000 jobs cut in the name of efficiency and shareholder value. The headlines called her ruthless. Stock prices wavered like a compass without true north. Board meetings stretched into the night, while her assistant Miles Richardson fielded increasingly aggressive calls from investors who questioned her leadership. That Tuesday evening at the diner, Destiny wore rain-soaked designer clothes and exhaustion. Vivian's Italian leather wallet slipped from her pocket as she stood to leave. The soft thud against linoleum caught Lily's attention. Without hesitation, the little girl scooped it up, her fingers tracing the embossed initials VH, before handing it to her father. "We should call her," Lily said with the certainty of someone who believed in doing right. Ethan dialed the number from the business card tucked behind Vivian's driver's license. Her voice answered on the second ring, crisp even through phone static. 20 minutes later, she returned, her presence somehow filling the small diner despite her relatively modest height. The television mounted above the coffee station chose that exact moment to break news that would reshape everything. A leaked internal email suggested Hart Financial was eliminating its scholarship program for low-income students, a program that had funded thousands of educations over the past decade. The anchor's voice cut through the diner's ambient noise like a blade. Vivian's face went pale as she recognized phrases torn from context, twisted into something unrecognizable. Neon lights reflected off wet pavement outside, casting everything in shades of blue and yellow. The coffee in Ethan's cup had gone cold, but he found himself watching Vivian's hands as she gripped her phone, knuckles white against the black device. Her wallet lay between them on the red vinyl table, a bridge neither had expected to cross. The first photographer arrived as Vivian finished her call to Miles. Then another. Car doors slammed in the parking lot, and camera flashes began painting the diner windows in stark white bursts. Ethan looked at his daughter, then at the woman who had stumbled into their simple evening. "The back door leads to the alley," he said quietly. "If you need to leave differently." What started as an exit strategy became something more complicated. Vivian needed to avoid the main roads where photographers waited like patient spiders. Ethan's van, unremarkable and ordinary, offered camouflage that her luxury vehicles couldn't provide. Lily, buckled into the back seat, pulled out her latest art project, a crayon drawing of a house with smoke curling from the chimney, a man and little girl holding hands in the front yard. "Where's the mommy?" Lily asked herself, then carefully drew in a figure with long hair and a dress. There. The radio crackled with updates about Hart Financial's plummeting stock price. Miles's voice came through Vivian's phone in clipped, urgent tones. The board wanted an emergency meeting. Investors were threatening to call for her resignation. Everything she had built over 15 years was crumbling because of sentences taken out of context and presented as proof of corporate heartlessness. Ethan's phone rang as they navigated through back streets toward downtown. The family court coordinator's voice was apologetic but firm. His custody hearing had been moved up by 2 weeks. His former mother-in-law had filed additional paperwork questioning his ability to provide stable care for Lily. His heart hammered against his ribs as he listened to dates and legal requirements he wasn't prepared to meet. A sharp bang from beneath the van announced their tire's surrender to a piece of construction debris. Steam rose from under the hood, as Ethan guided them to the curb. While he jacked up the van in the light drizzle, Vivian made calls to her security team, her lawyers, her board members. When the tow truck driver quoted a price that made Ethan's stomach clench, Vivian handed over her credit card without discussion. "Consider it payment for the ride," she said, her tone businesslike but not unkind. As they waited for the tire repair, Vivian found herself studying the man who had offered help to a stranger. His hands told stories of honest work scarred from tools, stained with the evidence of fixes that lasted. When he spoke to Lily, his voice carried a gentleness that made something tight in Vivian's chest loosen slightly. "I need to get to my office tonight," she said finally. "The meeting can't wait until morning. If you're willing to help me get there safely, I'll make it worth your time." Ethan weighed her offer against his instincts. His world was small, predictable, contained. Hers was vast, complicated, dangerous in ways he couldn't fully understand. But the custody hearing loomed, and lawyers cost money he didn't have. "Just tonight," he said. "And my daughter comes with us. I don't have anywhere else for her to go." The Hart Financial Building pierced the San Francisco skyline like a glass needle, its top floors glowing against the night sky. Ethan had driven past it countless times, without considering the lives contained within its walls. Now, sitting in the marble lobby while Vivian worked 30 floors above, he felt the weight of different worlds colliding. Lily spread her homework across a coffee table that probably cost more than Ethan made in a month. Her math worksheet asked questions about word problems, involving hundreds of dollars amounts that felt both impossibly large and painfully small, depending on context. She worked with the focused concentration of someone who understood that completing homework was her job, just like fixing things was her father's job. Around midnight, Vivian emerged from the elevator looking like someone who had fought a battle, and wasn't certain of the outcome. She found Lily asleep against Ethan's shoulder, her math completed in careful pencil marks. Something about the scene, the protective way his arm curved around his daughter, the trust implicit in the child's sleep-stirred memories Vivian had buried under years of corporate necessity. "Do you have many friends?" Lily asked during a break in the night's crisis management, her question delivered with the straightforward curiosity of childhood. Vivian paused in her review of legal documents. The question seemed simple, but its answer revealed caverns she rarely explored. "I have colleagues," she said carefully. "That's not the same thing," Lily observed, returning to her crayon drawing of the house with the family in front. Miles Richardson appeared in the doorway like an unwelcome shadow. His gaze took in Ethan's work clothes, Lily's scattered homework, the domestic scene that felt jarringly out of place in the corporate environment. "The Lowell Group is asking questions," he told Vivian, his voice carrying implications that made Ethan's skin prickle with warning. Miles's offer came later, when Vivian was in another meeting, and Lily had fallen asleep again. "Extra compensation," he murmured to Ethan. "If certain conversations stay private. You understand how business works." Ethan understood exactly how this kind of business worked, and it made him want to pack up his daughter and leave immediately. Instead, he gave Miles a look that communicated more than words could manage. The next morning brought fresh hell. A security breach had released additional emails. These ones suggesting that Vivian intended to eliminate the scholarship program entirely. The context was missing, the nuance obliterated, but the damage was immediate and severe. Protest groups formed outside Hart Financial's building. Social media erupted with condemnation. Stock prices fell like stones. Ethan found himself caught between worlds that operated by completely different rules. In his world, a man's word meant something, and you judged people by their actions over time. In Vivian's world, perception became reality overnight, and 15 years of building something meaningful could be destroyed by carefully edited half-truths. But something unexpected was happening between the crisis meetings and emergency calls. Vivian discovered that Ethan approached problems with a methodical patience she had forgotten existed. When the executive coffee machine broke a crisis that would normally require a service call and hours of disruption, he fixed it in 15 minutes with tools from his van and an understanding of how things actually worked. The entire floor buzzed with appreciation. Senior vice presidents thanked him like he had solved world hunger instead of simply replacing a worn gasket and cleaning some mineral deposits. For the first time in months, Vivian heard genuine laughter from her employees. Ethan watched Vivian defend a junior analyst from Miles's public criticism during a staff meeting. Her intervention was swift, professional, and absolutely effective. She redirected the conversation without humiliating anyone, but her message was clear: competence was valued, bullying was not. The analyst's grateful smile reminded Ethan why he had always believed that how you treated people revealed who you really were. Grant Lowell smelled blood in the water. The Lowell Group had been circling Hart Financial for years, waiting for exactly this kind of vulnerability. Phone calls to major shareholders began immediately. Whispered conversations about leadership changes and acquisition opportunities spread through the financial district like wildfire. The legal advice Ethan received about his custody case made his head spin and his bank account weep. Retaining a competent family law attorney would cost more than he made in 3 months. The court-appointed lawyer meant well, but her caseload was overwhelming, and Lily deserved better than overworked good intentions. A strange thing happened the next week. Ethan's phone rang with an offer for a major maintenance contract, the kind of job that could stabilize his finances for months. The building manager mentioned that Hart Financial had recommended his services, though Vivian never acknowledged any involvement when he thanked her. The weekend brought an unexpected invitation. Vivian needed to escape the media circus, and her Lake Tahoe house offered sanctuary. More importantly, it offered Lily a chance to attend a weekend robotics workshop for kids, something she had mentioned wanting to try but Ethan couldn't afford. Watching his daughter's face light up as she programmed a small robot to navigate an obstacle course, Ethan felt something shift inside his chest. Joy looked good on Lily, and he realized how rarely she had opportunities for pure, uncomplicated happiness. The photograph appeared in 3 newspapers the next morning. Vivian lifting Lily up to see into a display case, both of them laughing at something the child had said. The caption speculated about secret children and hidden relationships. Ethan's phone rang before 7 in the morning. His former mother-in-law had seen the picture and was filing additional paperwork to challenge his custody. The courtroom felt like a place where hope went to be measured and found wanting. Ethan's mother-in-law sat with her attorney, her expression conveying moral certainty about what was best for Lily. The tabloid photograph lay on the table like evidence of some crime. The child's environment has become unstable, the opposing attorney argued. Mr. Cole is involving his daughter in adult situations that are inappropriate and potentially harmful. Ethan felt the walls closing in, until the courtroom doors opened, and Vivian Hart walked in, dressed in an understated navy suit, carrying herself with the quiet authority of someone accustomed to high-stakes negotiations. "Your Honor," she said, when called upon, "I'd like to offer testimony regarding Mr. Cole's character." Her words were precise, factual, devastating in their simplicity. She described a man who had worked through the night to help others, who prioritized his daughter's needs above his own comfort, who conducted himself with integrity even when offered easier paths. "In my professional experience," she concluded, "principled people are rare. Principled parents are even rarer. Lily Cole is fortunate to have a father who consistently demonstrates both qualities." The judge postponed his decision, ordering additional evaluation time, but Ethan felt something he hadn't experienced in months. Hope. That evening, sitting on Vivian's back deck while Lily slept inside, they shared stories that had been carefully guarded until now. Ethan spoke about the accident that had taken his wife, the weight of sudden single parenthood, the daily challenge of being enough for someone who deserved everything. Vivian described growing up in a house where love was conditional on achievement, where emotional distance was mistaken for strength. "I built Hart Financial to prove something," she said, her voice quiet in the darkness. "I'm not sure I remember what anymore." Their almost kiss happened as naturally as breathing, and stopped just as naturally when Lily called out from her sleep, asking for water. Some moments were too fragile to risk, too important to rush. Miles Richardson's betrayal came with business cards and spreadsheets. His meeting with Grant Lowell was held in neutral territory, a downtown hotel bar where conversations could be deniable and loyalties could be quietly auctioned. "She's lost control of the narrative," Miles explained, sliding a folder across the table. "The board is ready for new leadership. You provide the stability, I provide the inside knowledge. Everyone wins." Grant Lowell's smile was the kind that made stock prices rise and smaller companies disappear. Back at Tahoe, the sanctuary was discovered. Paparazzi emerged from the tree line like hunters who had found their prey. Car doors slammed, camera motors whirred, and suddenly the peaceful morning became a tactical problem requiring immediate solution. Ethan's experience with evasion came from childhood games of hide and seek, not corporate warfare, but the principles seemed similar. The old logging trail behind the house led to a fire road that connected to the highway 3 miles south. His van could handle terrain that sports cars couldn't, and sometimes practical trumped elegant. The drive back to San Francisco felt like retreating from a battle they hadn't known they were fighting. Vivian discovered the altered emails that evening, buried in server logs that Miles thought he had cleaned. The evidence was their deliberate misrepresentation of her scholarship program, comments, but proving intentional manipulation would require more than metadata and timestamps. Lily's grandmother had hired a private investigator who specialized in family law cases. The man's photographs documented sleeping arrangements, arrival times, departure schedules, Every moment of their unconventional arrangement was catalogued as potential evidence of inappropriate environment. When Ethan made the decision to step back, it felt like tearing something vital from his chest. But Lily's welfare had to come first, and his involvement with Vivian was being weaponized against his daughter's future. "I can't drag you down with me," he told Vivian, standing in his small apartment while Lily played in her room, unaware that their extended family was dissolving. "You're not dragging me anywhere," she replied. "I'm the one who brought chaos into your life." "Maybe," he said. "But I'm the one who has to live with the consequences if I lose her." The emergency board meeting was scheduled for the following morning. Grant Lowell had secured enough proxy votes to force a confidence vote. The leaked emails, taken out of context but presented as proof of corporate callousness, had shifted public opinion beyond recovery. Vivian sat in her office that night, looking out at a city that had made her wealthy and powerful and ultimately alone. Lily's drawing was taped to her monitor, the house with the family in front, the smoke curling from the chimney. For the first time in years, she could see a different kind of success, one measured in moments rather than market share. Ethan packed with the efficiency of someone who had learned not to accumulate too much hope in any one place. The custody hearing was in 2 days. His lawyer had prepared him for the worst-case scenario, which felt increasingly like the only scenario. Lily found him sitting at their small kitchen table, her artwork spread before him like evidence of a life he was afraid of losing. "You don't trust Miss Vivian," she said, not asking but stating with the clarity children sometimes possessed. "I trust her," he replied. "I don't trust the world around her. The world around us is the same world around her, Daddy." His 8-year-old daughter was right, and the simplicity of that truth cut through weeks of complicated rationalizations. The custody hearing began at 9 in the morning. Ethan's former mother-in-law testified about stability and traditional family structures. Her attorney presented photographs and timelines, painting a picture of a single father in over his head, exposing his child to inappropriate adult drama. The judge listened with the patient expression of someone who had seen every variation of family crisis. When he asked if there were character witnesses, Ethan expected his usual supporters, Mrs. Chen from the school, his former supervisor, maybe his neighbor who sometimes watched Lily. He didn't expect the CEO of Hart Financial to walk into family court with 3 people he recognized from the corporate world, plus Mrs. Chen, plus the building superintendent who had given him the big maintenance contract, plus the IT engineer he had helped when Miles was being particularly difficult. One by one, they testified about a man who showed up when needed, who worked with integrity, who put his daughter's needs ahead of his own convenience. The IT engineer mentioned the scholarship Ethan's late wife had received from Hart Financial, the program that was being falsely portrayed as eliminated. "Mr. Cole understands the value of that program," the engineer said, "because it changed his family's life once already." The custody decision was immediate and final. Full custody to Ethan, with reasonable visitation rights for the grandmother. No restrictions, no further evaluations required. The judge's statement was brief but pointed the court preferred families that demonstrated love through action rather than control through litigation. Meanwhile, across town, the Hart Financial Board meeting was unfolding like a carefully choreographed dance. Grant Lowell presented his case for leadership change with charts and projections, and carefully worded concerns about public relations disasters. Vivian took the podium with a different kind of presentation. She had spent the night with the IT team, recovering deleted emails and tracing data modifications. The evidence was technical, but damning: systematic alteration of communications to create false impressions, deliberate sabotage of company reputation for personal gain. The scholarship program was never under threat, she explained, projecting the original, unaltered emails onto the boardroom screens. The modifications were designed to create exactly the controversy we've been experiencing. Miles Richardson's connection to Grant Lowell was documented through financial records that the IT team had recovered from supposedly secure servers. Shell companies, consulting agreements, payment schedules that coincided with each crisis that had befallen Hart Financial over the past 6 months. When the board voted, it wasn't close. Miles was terminated immediately, with criminal referrals to follow. Grant Lowell withdrew his acquisition interest with the speed of someone who had suddenly discovered other urgent business elsewhere. The press conference that afternoon marked the first time in months that Vivian Hart smiled in front of cameras. Not the practiced corporate expression she usually wore, but something genuine and unguarded. "I've learned recently that strength isn't the same as isolation," she told the reporters. "Building something meaningful requires more than just individual effort. It requires trust, cooperation, and the willingness to accept help from unexpected sources." 3 months later, the Hart Financial Scholarship Program announced its largest expansion in company history. The ceremony was held at Roosevelt Elementary School, where Mrs. Chen watched Lily Cole accept a small robotics award with the same calm competence her father brought to fixing complex problems. In the audience, Ethan sat next to Vivian, their hands linked with the comfortable ease of people who had found their way to each other through circumstances that had tested everything they thought they knew about themselves. After the ceremony, they drove to the same diner where everything had started. The neon sign still flickered, the coffee was still strong, and the apple pie was still served warm. But the atmosphere had changed, or perhaps they had changed enough to notice what had always been there, the possibility of finding family in unexpected places. Lily looked up from her piece of pie, and smiled at the two adults who had somehow become the stable center of her world. "It's okay, Daddy," she said softly. "We can leave." But this time, leaving meant something different. This time, it meant leaving behind the fear that happiness was too fragile to trust, too temporary to build upon. This time, it meant stepping forward together into whatever came next, with the confidence of people who had learned that the strongest foundations were built on mutual respect, shared values, and the simple willingness to show up when needed. The rain had stopped falling on Bay Bridge. The road stretched ahead like promises waiting to be kept.